you sure you want to record this? Okay.
Okay. So, Sue, how are you? I bet you're warmer than we are.
Yeah, it's really nice here. It's in the 70s, I think. I didn't even look today yet.
I can't remember what that feels like, I have to tell you.
Well, you won't need that sweater you have on. I guarantee it.
Yeah, it's what is it out here? 11 degrees, something like that.
Oh, is that all really?
It's cold.
It got warmer. It's now 17.
Oh,
At
okay.
least according to my phone.
Wow. Yeah, I'm just looking at my phone. Well, right now it says 62, but the high for today is going to be 72. But it's still warm. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got my dining room windows open about 5 feet from me, and the air feels wonderful.
I look forward to that moment. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's love got to do with it, or essentially romantic love in the Talmud. And as we read this, there are a couple of things that there are a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, if you're just reading the Talmud in terms of understanding what Jewish life is like, or what is expected of us as Jews, one could say it's easy to read like that. But then you get into this Haggadic or midrashic legend, so to speak, and they really go on a tangent. So you kind of have to remember a little bit about that. Plus, keep in mind the worldview during this time is very heteronormative, which means very male oriented, not just the Jewish society. Remember, we lived as part of other societies, especially when this was written in the times of the Mishnah. This was under Roman occupation. So it's kind of like before, during, and after the Roman occupation. So there's, there you have to kind of keep that in mind as well. But we're talking about how people normally live their life, and we can't use 21st century judgment against them because it's not fair. It's like the apples and oranges. So let's kind of begin and kind of look and see the first part. Keep in mind, there's a couple things that I'm going to go through. So let's go through the first Mishnah first here. Let me just get it up here. All right. So the first Mishnah is part of what's called Ketubot. Tractate Ketubot deals specifically with the contract between a man and a woman when they get married. This is a legal document. It is a contract, although the one we use today doesn't necessarily have anything binding in it unless you get a traditional one. But it's a little different than what we have today. So just kind of like keep that in mind. So first, this first part is very straightforward. If a man forbade himself to have relations with his wife, if a man forbade himself to have relations with his wife, in other words, how long before they get divorced? Beit Shammai ruled 2 weeks until he must divorce her. Beit Hillel ruled 1 week. And then it says, and this is the bold, students may go away to study Torah without the permission of their wives for a period of 30 days. Laborers can leave for 1 week. And then it says the time for conjugal duty, conjugal duty is, the time for sex, prescribed in the Torah are for those who lived at home every day. So if you're working from home, every day. For laborers outside the city, twice a week. For donkey drivers, once a week. For camel drivers, once in 30 days. For sailors, once every 6 months. These are the ruling of Rabbi Eliezer. Now, kind of keep something in mind. The one thing that you have to understand is in the Ketubot, traditionally, there's a thing where the man and the woman both are not necessarily equal, but they both have responsibilities. The man is responsible for food, clothing, and sex. The woman is responsible for fidelity. Now, anything else above that is gravy, but that's the minimum requirements. If a man is responsible for food, clothing, and sex, that means the man has to be around enough to be able to provide for food, clothing, and sex. It makes perfect sense that sailors would go once, have to come back every 6 months, which means you can't go on multi-year trips. Camel drivers once every 30 days, because if you're part of camel drive, you'd gone from, let's say, a month, and this is like the minimum thing. By the way, it also says, if you, there's more to this. For example, if you are a tanner, if you're someone that dries leather for parchments or makes belts or shoes or whatever, if you work with leather, you're only required to have sex once every 3 to 6 months. And that has a lot to do with the fact that, yeah, they smell, and it's really a kind of a, it's atrocious. Also, so depending on the job that you do, you also have that had a little to do with how often you have to have kind of relationship. Keep in mind that sex for intimacy is not the same as sex for procreation. So, and you can have intimacy without having sex. This is the rabbinical view of it. That we, so this, you kind of like, you have to remember that it's not this, we don't look at it this as the same type, it's not the same as it was that is today. All right, so given that, we're going to go to a story about men leaving their wives to go learn Torah. So the story is very, I think everybody kind of knows the story. But if you don't, we're going to kind of review it here. And it comes from Ketubot. Remember last time, one of the things I did say is that there is an arc in the Talmud where you have like 7 stories or bookends. So you have one at the beginning, one at the end. This is one of the book stories at the end of this arc that has to do with husbands and wives. And it's not, if you take it at face value, you're going to think of it, oh my God, that's terrible. But we're going to look a little bit closer at it to see exactly what it is that they're talking about. So I'm going to start with this one, and then I'll kind of go with all the characters. So, let's go. You ready? This is a great story. Rabbi Akiva was a shepherd of Ben Kalba Sabua. The latter's daughter, The latter's daughter, Ben Kalba Sabua, seeing how modest and meritorious he was, said to him, "Were I to be betrothed to you, would you go away to study at an academy?" So this is Sabua's daughter talking to Akiva. "Yes," he replied. She was then secretly betrothed to him and sent him away. When her father heard, he drove her from his house and forbade her by a vow to have any benefit from his estate. He went and spent 12 years at the academy. When he returned home, he brought with him 12,000 disciples. He heard an old man saying to her, "How long will you lead the life of a living widow?" She said, "If he would listen to me, he would sit another 12 years. He said, "It is then with her consent that I am acting." And he departed again and spent another 12 years in the academy. When he finally returned, he brought with him 24,000 disciples. His wife heard of his arrival and went out to meet him. Her neighbors said to her, "Borrow some respectable clothes and put them on." But she replied, "A righteous man knows the life of his beast," from the book of Proverbs. On approaching him, she fell upon her face and kissed his feet. His students were about to push her aside. He said to them, "Leave her alone. Mine and yours are hers." Her father heard that a great man had come to the town and said, "I shall go to him. Maybe he will annul my vow." When he came to him, Rabbi Akiva asked, "Would you have made your vow disowning your daughter if you had known that he was a great man?" Her father replied, "Even if he knew one chapter or even one single law." Rabbi Akiva then said to him, "I am the man." And he fell upon his face and kissed his feet and also gave him half of his wealth. The daughter of Rabbi Akiva acted in similar ways toward Ben Azai. This is indeed an illustration of the proverb, "You follows you, a daughter's act are like those of her mother." All right, so isn't it a beautiful story? So let me ask you a couple things, just kind of give you some background. Ben Kalba Sabua was not a poor person. As a matter of fact, there were in the Talmud, you learn about 3 very, very rich men that kept Jerusalem going with wood, oil, and animals. He was one of those men. He supplied the oil. He supplied the oil and wood for all the sacrifices. So he was able to keep Judaism going during this time. So I want you to keep in mind that there's kind of a subtext in this. And then I'll tell you then I'll tell you the other things. So first of all, what do you think of the students, Akiva students? First 12,000, 24,000. What do you think of these guys? Joanne, you're going like this. Why?
Can't hear you.
Um,
Yeah.
I just don't understand, how they can make it work together, what they see going on at his home versus how they all are following him. It seems like it should seem weird to them.
Which part should seem weird?
That he just like leaves his wife for 12 years at a time.
Okay, but keep in mind, he has, according to the story, he has her permission. So yeah, they probably think that, but okay, what about, how did they treat his wife when they first meet her?
Rather shabbily.
Mhm.
Yeah, rather shabbily. Do they have any respect for her at all?
No, and they really should, because she encouraged him to go and study.
Right, but remember the very first thing, when it says his wife heard his students were about to push her aside, said, on approaching him, she fell upon her face and kissed his feet. His students were about to push her aside, and then he said, leave her alone, mine and yours are hers. So at first, they don't even know who she is, and they're treating her very disrespectfully, or basically very mean. They're not really a good, are these, worthy students, of Akiva? I mean, aren't they worthy? Yeah, Ellen, go ahead.
I really think this is a bad example.
Bad example.
She's disowned by her father. She's had 24 years of living as a living widow, as the one person says to her. Her betrothed, I mean, she had no conjugal sex at all for 24 years. She was only betrothed. She wasn't even married. What do you mean she's his wife?
That's wait a minute. Rabbi Ellen, what do you mean she wasn't his wife?
She was betrothed, but she didn't say she was married.
So there are two parts to a Jewish wedding. There's the nisuin, which is the engagement, and the kedushin, where you actually get married. So she was engaged to him.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
it.
So she doesn't technically, now why can't, when it says she was secretly betrothed, who should actually betroth her? I mean, who would actually give her away? Would be the father. Yeah.
But he didn't want her to marry him.
I like John. Maybe they both liked it this way. Yeah, that's a possibility. It could be it could be that's a possibility. She liked living on her own. She liked her independence. So you got to give, that's also something that, we're not thinking about.
But also,
Yeah, go ahead, Kay.
she believed that studying was more important than him hanging around the house.
How wonderful of her. That's a great concept. I mean, studying may be good, but for 24 years? I think she liked her independence. We don't get a lot of information for after this, but little bits in here. But so let's kind of look at something else here. I'm going to jump down to the next story because it's going to impact the rest of what I'm going to tell you.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Is there something in the Talmud that she couldn't have gone with him? He had all these thousands of people who were studying with him. Why couldn't he bring his wife? Or betrothed or whatever.
She was a woman.
Well, that is part of it. Women at that time didn't have the opportunity to study. Not all women, anyways. Some did, but not only that, but apparently her daughter. So they eventually have kids. Her daughter does the exact same thing with Ben Azai, where she allows him to go off for 12, 24 years to study. So it's kind of like a family trait. So did her daughter do that out of the goodness of her heart because, yeah, my mom did that, or did she appreciate the fact that her mother was independent, which was very different than the rest of it? Because if her mom was independent, that meant she had to come up with a living, whether or not it was sewing or farming, whatever. She had to do something for food and money.
I thought her father was rich, but wait, he disowned her, so
That's
it
right.
doesn't matter. Yeah.
And not only that, the father gives Akiva half of his wealth. Doesn't give it to his daughter. So it's kind of interesting, but let's take a look. So let's take a look at the rest. I asked you specifically about the students to begin with, and then we'll go back to the story because I think the students are acting in such a way that it's, that I would say is not respectful. They don't, they have no respect for her. They have, they're all like into Akiva. They're disciples. They're listening to him. There's a section as the story goes on in one of the bookends. This is like the end of this story. It says, they said, we don't even know who Amru. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of students from the area of Gabas until Antiparas, and they all died during one period because they did not treat each other with respect. And the world was left barren until Rabbi Akiva came to our rabbis in the south and taught them, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, and they upheld the Torah at that time. It was taught that they all died from Pesach to Shavuot. Rabbi Chamad, the son of Abbas, said, and some say Rabbi Chia bar Arbin, they all died an ugly death. What was it? Rabbi Nachman said, Askara, the croup, or they had the croup, and they all died. 12,000 of them, or 24,000, all died. Why? Because they didn't have enough, they didn't treat each other with respect. The exceptions were his new students, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. The interesting thing is some of these rabbis, you already know. You've already heard them. They were the rabbis of Bnei Brak in the Talmud. They were the ones that planned the Bar Kokhba revolt. So we're talking about some very powerful, eventually powerful people. But all of his students died because they couldn't show respect. Where didn't they show respect? Back up here. They completely ignored, they just were very disrespectful to by the way, her name is Rachel. Later on in the Talmud, it actually gives her a name. Her name is Rachel. Now, let's take a look at this for a minute, and let me help Ellen and others in this one thing. This is a rabbinic fairy tale. This probably didn't happen. What they're trying to do is push Akiva up to the status of almost patriarchal. Now, if you remember, one of the things that happens, and I just want to check. I know Carter wrote a couple of things. Oh, okay. Oh, Angela, there you go. It's this is rabbinic. Well, the real thing is, it is rabbinic fairy tale, but what it is it's a way Akiva really did exist. And remember, when Moses is put in the book of Numbers, when Moses is put in the cleft of the rock, he tells God, listen, I followed you, I listened to you, I talked to you, but I've never really seen you. So God puts him in this cleft of the rock, this is in the Torah, covers his eyes, and as God passes by, uncovers his eyes, so Moses is able to see his back. Now the Midrash goes into a large explanation of what did Moses see, and one of the things they say he saw, either then, of course, in the story is also right before he dies, God takes Moses and sits him in Akiva's class in the Beit Midrash. So Moses is sitting in the back of the class, Akiva is explaining something, and Moses says, I don't understand what they're talking about. They're talking about, what's in the Torah, how to be Jewish, so on and so forth. And it's like, saying that Akiva will be is like the next Moses. Like, he's that exciting, he's that bright, and he is now going to bring people, together and remember, this is in the Roman occupation. So they're trying to make Akiva patriarchal. And how do they do this? Well, first of all, the word Akiva is an Arabic word, is an Arabic name. Akiva is Arabic for Jacob, for Yaakov. So not only that, so they're making him as if he's a Jacob, and the next thing they do is really great. At the very end, it says "you follows you." Okay, I didn't talk about that. Anybody know what a "you" is?
A sheep,
Sheep.
Sheep.
a female sheep.
Exactly. You'll notice here in the Hebrew, I've highlighted two words, Rachela. Rachela is a derivation of Rachel, Jacob's wife that he loved. And it's also, Rachela is the Aramaic word for sheep. So not only are they trying to make him look like he's the most amazing person, but what he's actually saying is that he's patriarchal. He's going to save us. He is like he's the one that the whole dynasty, if you would, or the whole, Judaism is going to pass through as a result of everything that he's doing. This is how strong of a character he is. And what made him strong was not the fact that he was away from his wife. What makes him strong was the 25 years he spent studying. That's what they consider between studying and teaching. That's what made him strong. This is where he gets all his disciples. Do his disciples die? That's an interesting question, because what the Midrash has done with that little thing is there's a thing between Pesach and Shavuot, between Passover and Shavuot, there are 49 days, the 50th being Shavuot. We count them as part of the Omer. The beginning parts of the Omer are considered sad days. And we're not supposed to get haircuts. There's no weddings. There's no music. You're not supposed to shave, all sorts of things like that. And why do we do that? Because it was considered a sad day when Akiva's students died, except on the 33rd day of the Omer, Lag BaOmer, all of a sudden, the plague stopped. And it's on Lag BaOmer that everyone's allowed to get haircuts and stuff like that. So you find in the traditional communities, on this 33rd day of the Omer, there's all sorts of things happening. There's weddings, there's literally haircuts, and for kids and stuff like that. So it becomes kind of a big deal. But that's the reason why we do that, is because of this story. Although the story itself is probably not true. Did Akiva's students die during the Roman occupation? Yes, that's a definite. But because from a disease, no. Probably because they were killed by the Romans. Akiva himself was martyred, as we read in the Yom Kippur service in the Avodah, when it goes through the martyrology, all the rabbis that were killed as a result of being, of teaching Torah, because the Romans had made teaching Torah illegal. When Akiva was killed, he was tied to a stake. He was burned, and while he's burning and in pain, he says the words, "I always wanted to know how to love God with all my might, and you shall love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might." And he wanted to know how. He said, "I now know what it means." And as he's dying, he says the Shema, and the letters float to heaven. Yes, Bob.
And like it has quite a few parallels to the Jesus story.
Yeah, how about that? And if you ask me which came first, I would tell you they both came about the same time. The only difference is Akiva was not resurrected. We don't have that, but it does. There are a lot of commonalities if you look at not just Akiva, not just Jesus, but other characters in that time period. You'll find a very similar storyline that goes on. Yeah, Ellen.
Yeah, I am wondering why the ideal Jewish man is essentially celibate.
No, you're reading. I'm going to interrupt you. You're reading it wrong. They're not celibate. Remember, they're only allowed to go away for 30 days. That's the ruling.
Yeah, but Akiva was essentially celibate.
This is a fairy tale. This didn't happen.
Yeah, but it's the ideal. His wife says, "Go study, and I won't see you for 12 years. And I'm betrothed. I'm betrothed, so you're not going to see anyone else either." It's essentially, in order to be a great Jewish rabbi, you need to be celibate.
No, that's not it at all. Angela, and you're muted. Okay,
I have learned that in our culture that everything can always change on something, on the little accent or the little yud, or how ooh and yud and ooh almost sounds like. I mean, I've learned that there may be more than 7 days a week sometimes there's 8. I've learned that to never really try to grasp it, because if I do, I'm gonna get fundamental. So I just go with it, whatever I learn, whether it's from Chabad to my own rabbi to this that my sister has told me to go look into, and I just go with it. And if I do that, and now that I understand that it's somewhat a rabbinic lore, because I didn't even know was the missing piece, it's all just learning. We all just learning, and that's it. Questioning, learning. Isn't that what it is to be Jewish? Question, learning, have a sense of humor through all the misery that we go through, and also the joys. That's pretty
Right.
much it.
And the interesting thing is, when we look at the story, if the story is true as written, then we really feel bad for the wife, for Rachel, because she got she got a bad deal here, because if he was gone for 24 years, that doesn't give them a lot of more time together. And by the way, according to the story, he's 40 years old when he starts this. So, yeah, I know that.
To have a daughter.
That's like I said, a lot of this doesn't make sense when you look at some of the reality.
Older men make better lovers.
What's that?
Oh, okay.
Older men make better lovers.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Bob and I appreciate that. Sorry, Parker. You're muted.
Maybe older women have poor memories.
I'm not going to touch that one. But I think when you look at there are some specific obligations, and a modern day ketubah or a modern traditional ketubah does in fact identify those obligations. And it is in the ideal world, if a woman does not get sex out of her marriage for a certain amount of time, she can actually file for divorce. The challenge with that was the people she had to go to get a divorce from were men. She had to go to the rabbis, and not all the men were, were good at listening and accepting that she had a problem. It was more about it was your fault type thing. In the case of Akiva, I mean, the idea here is that here was a woman who, granted as a fairy tale, was independent, was able to, support herself while her husband was learning, and probably did the same when she came home, and her daughter probably did the same, was the same. So I think there's a lot of good things that came out of this, understanding that it's kind of a fairy tale, but more understanding as well as what our tradition does with Rabbi Akiva, because he is in fact a major character. If you go through the Talmud, a lot of his rulings are what we still hold as far as how to be Jewish 101 in many cases. So that's a little bit about what's love got to do with it. And I'll let you have those answers. As a reminder, we're not going to meet next week because on Monday, I'll be walking around Washington, D.C. with a bunch of teenagers, and I don't come in till late Monday night, so I'm not quite sure I'll get all the stuff done. So we're not going to meet next Tuesday. Chances are, I hope I'll be sleeping.
What's going on in Washington with you and the teenagers?
We're going to Litak. It's called the Litak Ken seminar. We're going to learn a little bit about advocacy and create speeches for for our representatives. They'll be giving their speeches in front of Senators Schumer and Gillibrand and Representative Tonko, the speeches that they have to write on topics that they're interested in pushing for. So it's kind of like a beginning at how to be an advocate and how to do lobbying. So that's where we're going. I'll go Friday through Monday, so it's kind of exciting. All right, so folks, stay warm, stay safe.
Thank you
And
again.
Sue,
Have a
Stay
great
where you are.
trip. Have a great trip if we don't see you.
all right, take care, folks. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.